Well, after they joined us here last Tuesday, the feedback from you almost immediately flooded in. They are a hit, Peter. Keep them here, keep them here. Smart, informed, intelligent conversation. You've all wanted it for so long. It's on full display every Tuesday night here with these two, isn't it? Joining me now, columnist for The Australian, Jennifer Oriel, one of our nation's most foremost intellectuals, former Deputy Prime Minister, John Anderson. Lots of issues, you two, but I'll start with you if I can, Jennifer. A pretty incisive column this morning in The Australian, encouraging the PM to be wary of distraction. How successful do you think the PM's been at blocking out the media whiplash on minor ranking issues and focusing instead back on government's core business?
I think he was thrown off course last week, and you could clearly see that the hostile press gallery had hit his confidence. Today I watched him in Parliament and he was back on form. I think in significant part he returned to form because he spent time with a Christian family that preaches the spirit of forgiveness, of turning the other cheek and letting go of grievances. And when you can do that, you're able to ignore distractions more readily and stay on track, whether that's how you care for your family or staying track on friendships or, in the PM's case, getting back to business. In Parliament today, he was pretty formidable, not quite at his, perfect target strike rate form, but he was certainly much better than he has been, concentrating on the economy, concentrating on the future of Australia, post-economic recovery, and the work that needs to be done in aged care. And I think that was pretty impressive.
It's interesting, John Anderson, this today was the first parliamentary sitting day of 2022, but it's also the last full sitting week of the year, if you can believe it, or the current parliament. Now, we're about to head into an election campaign, that's why it's constrained, but I'm interested in your assessment. This religious freedom legislation introduced late this afternoon into the parliament, what happens to the electorate who care about these issues if the government doesn't get this commitment passed? Made in 2017, taken to the election in 2019. Will this leave them open to attack from Labor, or will people understand that they've at least tried?
Look, I think there's a real issue there, because it's got to be remembered that at the micro level, the politics of this now, as you've alluded to, a previous, let's face it, progressive Prime Minister said religious freedom was more important than same-sex marriage, and he'd moved to protect it, set up an inquiry. The Liberal Party won when nobody, or the coalition won again when nobody thought they would, and part of their manifesto, was to push this through 4 years after the promise that religious freedom would be protected. We can see why it's needed, because of the vexatious hits that are being made by people everywhere who want to delegitimise faith and people of faith. It's really quite concerning. At the macro level, the idea that somehow or other freedoms will be advanced by ignoring the four key elements, which are freedom of belief and conscience, of speech, of association and the right not to associate, and frankly, private property, and can somehow be better substituted for by a system of competing human rights, where we all clash with other Australians for our rights and technocrats rule. It is beyond my imagination how people in the coalition at a senior level could not understand how bad that thinking is. And it's leading to, I think, more cynicism than ever in the community. Labor recognised it's got a problem with people of faith. It would be an astonishing thing if the coalition not only had a problem with people of faith, but was seen to walk away from very clear commitments.
Look, it was yesterday we were celebrating the record-breaking reign of the Queen, but interestingly, overnight in New Zealand, the Maori Party has other ideas. They've called for a divorce from the British monarchy. Jennifer, do you think this is a serious move now out of New Zealand?
Well, they've cancelled everything, haven't they? Now they're cancelling the Queen, so happy birthday, Mum. But I think that the problem here is the same as most of the issues in the cancel culture campaign. We see that there's a lot of destruction in cancel culture, pulling down statues, vandalism, sometimes attacking people who have different beliefs to the people in the politically correct left. And the problem with that is there's nothing put in its place. So they'd best be sort of spending more time on constructive work. What kind of society do they want to live in? What kind of world do they want to live in? What kind of country will replace the one that has been, has the Queen as head of state? What kind of world do they want to live in? These are the questions that they need to be answering. And if you're not answering those questions, you're not considering the reality, which is they have choices. They can be ruled. There are three kind of regimes in the world at the moment. There's a communist regime under very militant China. There are Islamist regimes, and you can have that kind of world to live under, or you can choose liberal democracy. And a lot of liberal democracies have come from a Christian base and the British Empire. That's the reality. So if you want a free country, you'd best be sticking with the Queen. Or going the American model,
Interestingly, John...
but that's a republic.
Well, just on that point, John Anderson, interestingly, the ultimate small target strategy for Anthony Albanese, despite it being in the Labor platform, over the last couple of days, he said there'll be no move on a republic in the first term. I think that's to quieten down all the working class traditional Labor voters who are a bit dubious about the elites running the show yet again. But can you trust Albanese and Labor on that question?
Well, I'd make the general comment. It seems to me there are very few people you're going to trust now to address the major issues that actually need fixing. There's an old saying, don't fix it if it ain't broken. We've got any number of serious things that are really broken. I'm one of the 10% of Australians, by the way, according to the polls, who believes that the issue in this coming election, the one we should be really demanding that our leaders answer, is who can best secure us in a strategic sense and in a supply chain sense in these incredibly dangerous times in which we live. It is, I don't know what's happened in this country, why it is that we obsess so much over the symbolic when the really serious stuff is staring us in the face. Are we really worthy heirs to the people who set this country up and paid such a price to lock its freedoms in? Are we not thinking, we talk about 2050 all the time, will we still be a free democratic country operating in a liberal, democratic, rules-based international global order? These are the things that really ought to be worrying people. And I'd have to say that I think that the latest ARM proposal is dead on arrival. And I just don't think Australians will be impressed by anybody trying to pump it up.
Not at all. I think we'll pick up the last part of what you just said there, John, for next week, because I think that's a really good place to start. What is the things that should be front of mind, top of mind in the election campaign that are not there? Jennifer and John, my audience, love you. Thank you for being with us here on a Tuesday night.